it is unknown when. The cultivation world that was called a game suddenly appeared. Players entered this cultivation world to battle against monsters and raised their abilities. At the same time, they could take the items and the cultivation they earned into the real world. Until one day, disaster came upon them as countless monsters arrived in the real world from the cultivation world. Ever signed, the monsters invaded the real world. The war between humans and monsters became endless. Cities fell in succession. The few remaining survivors were still Butterfly defending, the very last city. The city is about to collapse. If this continues, the human race is doomed. What? What is this? This is unbelievable. Unreal. Of sheer size giant is the final demon lord. The final demon lord appeared. Too many monsters. I soared immortal. Gu Qingshan, no. There's only one move left. Return together that can kill this demon god. But this move also will kill Mr. Gu. Gu Qingshan was the last hope of the human race. But he decided that he haven't any other options. Only him can destroy the demon lord. And he rushed to him. Human warriors asked to use all of their remaining spirit power to support Mr. Gu. That was all that there can do in that moment. Mr. Gu believed that the war would end if he succeeded now. With all his strength and the fortitude of his warriors, he beats the demon lord. After that battle, the last immortal of the human race fell. Relentless war between humani and demons indeed in the defeat of the human race. The present world started to enter in the state of destruction, and player Gu Qingshan killed the definitional demon lord, earning himself a chance of a resurrection. The rain had been pouring all night and all day. Suddenly, a hand emerged from a dead soldier's grave. The night patrol was so frightened that the guard dropped his lantern and sprinted back to the outpost to report what he had seen. Armed with torches and scimitars, the commander and the night patrol left the outpost to personally investigate what the guard had witnessed. In the pouring rain, all they could see was a silhouette sitting quietly amidst a pile of corpses. The commander raised his lantern higher for a better view. Under its light, they saw a soldier sitting with his back to them, dressed in tattered leather armor and leaning on a heap of skulls. The commander tightened his grip on his blade and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" Through the pouring rain, they heard only a faint reply. "I am from the Avant-Garde Legion. I am severely wounded and unable to move." "Unable to move?" The commander's expression softened slightly, and he lowered his blade. Approaching closer, he said, "Oh, so you're a comrade from the Avant-Garde. Allow me to assist you." "Thank you." "You're welcome. And now perish." The blade gleamed silver as it cut through the rain, slicing the soldier's neck with precision. With an incredibly accurate and swift strike, the commander cleanly decapitated the soldier, sending the head rolling down into the dead soldier's pit. One strike solved all the problems. Smirking, the commander sheathed his blade, but his expression suddenly changed. "You!" Amidst the pile of corpses, a silhouette sprung up, pushing off the leg of one of the soldiers. In his hand, a cold steel blade sparkled brightly as it severed the commander's hand. With one precise strike, the commander's hand was severed and flew off to the side. Blood gushed from his wound, but the splatters quickly dissolved in the pouring rain and wind. Intense pain throbbed in the commander's head, but his face expressed disbelief, and the silhouette of that person reflected in his eyes. The saber in the reflection of his eyes inexorably approached, growing larger and larger. A second later, the saber plunged into his eye socket. For a couple of moments, he felt excruciating pain, and then darkness followed. Catching his breath, the young man pulled his saber out of the commander's eye socket. The commander's lifeless body fell, splashing into a dirty puddle behind him. The young man stood there, tightly gripping his saber. The nighttime downpour continued, washing the dirt off his face and revealing a pair of glistening pupils. Suddenly his gaze became sharp. Right at his feet, the commander's belly swelled, emitting strange gurgling sounds. Taking a deep breath, the young man gripped his saber with both hands and struck directly at the bloated belly of the commander. A scream rang out, a sound beyond human capability, as a black mist suddenly burst out from the commander's belly. Something inside desperately tried to escape, And then his stomach exploded and a thin black claw reached out. Before the horrifying demonic claw could do anything, the young man swung his saber, shouting, "Die!" The writhing corpse abruptly froze, and the demonic claw also fell, ceasing its movement. Everything fell silent again. Foul, black blood began to flow from under the commander's corpse. Seeing it, the young man finally breathed a sigh of relief, moving his saber aside. He looked down at the gruesome corpse, murmuring to himself, "What a strange scenario. I wonder what the reward will be." Brimming with anticipation, the young man yelled, "System!" One breath, 2, 3. Time ticked slowly, but nothing happened. In the dark night, only the incessant rain and wind could be heard. Slightly surprised, the young man turned his head, looking around. Behind him, a pit filled with corpses. Under his feet, the demon's corpse not far away, a terrified militiaman trembling to death. "Strange," he muttered. "The quest is not complete?" If the system remained silent, it meant the quest had not been fulfilled. The young man looked at the militiaman, sensing that he had missed something. He strained his mind, trying to move forward, but almost stumbled. Previously, he had to focus on killing the demon, but now, when he could relax, he felt excruciating pain throughout his body, as if 1,000 needles were being thrust into him. His legs turned heavy as lead, and every step became incredibly difficult. This couldn't be true. During the apocalypse, he had exerted all his strength to defeat the last demon lord, but instead of being thrown out of the game, he had to drag his agonizing body, abandoned in this god-forsaken place. Where exactly had he ended up? The young man squinted, slowly approached the militiaman, and saluted, saying, "The Proud Horse Regiment, Guqing Shan, reporting for duty." You killed the commander!" The militiaman trembled in fear. "He wasn't human," replied Guqing Shan, assessing the militiaman. The militiaman wore outdated leather armor that lacked any adaptation for harnessing spiritual energy. Even the most despised army unit wouldn't be allowed to use such an antiquated toy. Guqing Shan looked at himself again and saw the same ancient armor, with all his equipment vanished. It was strange. The militiaman leaned a bit closer to the dead pit, the commander's mutilated body still lying in the mud. The militiaman hesitated and asked, "But before you killed him, how did you know he wasn't human?" Guqing Shan shrugged. "I simply exercised caution. He attacked first." He returned to the dead pit, took the commander's corpse, and dragged it closer to the militiaman for a better look. "Look, this is a blood-shedding demon." With the help of his saber, Guqing Shan tore open the commander's stomach and revealed the monstrous creature with a horrifying face, black body, and strange vertical pupils. Seeing the monster's corpse with his own eyes, the militiaman was even more shocked. He remembered his comrades, dying strangely one after another in the past few days, and felt a chill run down his spine. Finally, he thanked the young man. The militiaman calmed down and asked, "You said your name is Guqing Shan?" "Yes." "From the Proud Horse Regiment?" "Yes." "Your token?" Guqing Shan took out his token, checked it, and handed it to the militiaman for inspection. The token was much heavier than he remembered. With the current level of craftsmanship, a simple identification token should be as light as a sheet of paper. So why did this one weigh almost a kilogram? The young man became more perplexed. The militiaman took the token and carefully examined it. It had 6 words written on it. The Proud Horse Regiment, Guqing Shan, and it seemed to have gone through some rough times. It was genuine. The militiaman exhaled. The nervousness vanished from his face, leaving only profound exhaustion. "Finally, a living person. We can't stay outside for long. Come with me to the outpost." Not sensing any insincerity in his words, Guqing Shan scratched his chin and agreed. The militiaman returned his token and turned towards the outpost. Examining the token after receiving it back, Guqing Shan carefully inspected it. It's not just heavy, but it's also made of a bronze alloy with only a few words on the outer side. The quality is terrible, clearly an outdated trinket. Outdated. Guqing Shan suddenly fell into deep thought as a horrifying idea crossed his mind. He quickly raised his gaze and stared at the militiaman ahead. Leather armor of an old style. The idea was insane, too unbelievable to accept. But Gu Qingshan couldn't resist asking, "Brother, what year is it now?" The militiaman turned around and replied perplexedly, "The last year of the world, of course." Gu Qingshan was stunned. Streams of information rushed before his eyes, forming a transparent blue panel. Click tilde. A cold, mechanical voice sounded. "The current time is determined as the last year of the world. The flow of time is stable. Escape from the apocalypse is confirmed. Identity established. Current identity, human, Vanguard Legion, soldier of the Proud Horse Regiment." The system became active again, but Gu Qingshan felt no joy about it, only mistrust. Why is it the last year of the world now? The events of the game started in a different era. This period of time should have been just one of the game settings, a relic of history. People from the real world hadn't officially entered this dreadful game of another world yet. When the first players begin, a whole year will have already passed. Could I have returned before the game start? But what about the real world? Could I have returned to the past in reality? Feeling his heart pounding uncontrollably, Gu Qingshan immediately started looking around. The militiamen had gone far ahead, already reaching the outpost gate. Looking at the gate, Gu Qingshan could still sense faint spiritual energy emitted by the invisibility formation. From a distance, amidst the desolate landscape, one could see a gigantic silhouette shimmering in the rain, occasionally disappearing and reappearing. Gu Qingshan slowly raised his hand and bit himself. 2 rows of teeth marks appeared on his skin, and even a little blood oozed out. It hurt! This wasn't a dream! Gu Qingshan stood motionless, like a statue, paying no attention to the pouring rain and the cold. The lit fire gradually warmed up the cold and damp guardhouse of the militiamen. Sticking his saber into the ground, Gu Qingshan wrapped his injured hand and sat down on the ground, leaning against the wall. Identifying himself as Zhao Lu, the militiaman brought a kettle of water, placed it on the fire, and covered it with a lid. Zhao Lu rummaged through his pockets in search of a small decorative box and handed it to Gu Qingshan, saying, "I was lucky you were there. Otherwise, I would have surely died at the hands of that monster." "What is this?" Gu Qingshan took the box and asked. "The last 2 healing pills from our outpost," Zhao Lu replied. "Why don't you keep them for yourself?" Gu Qingshan shook his head. "I'm not a cultivator, I can't use them," Zhao Lu negated. Gu Qingshan opened the box, and indeed there were a couple of pills inside. Taking one in his hand, he examined it carefully. The pill was in perfect condition, with even a thin layer of plant juice remaining on its surface. The light green pill emitted a faint herbal scent, which had a calming effect. It was a healing pill. Healing pills were a lower-tier type of items that restored health points. In the past, Gu Qingshan wouldn't have even spared them a glance, but his previous cultivation level had disappeared without a trace, and his body ached from the injuries he had sustained. Now, these 2 pills were precious treasures to him. Gu Qingshan couldn't help but ask, "Do you only have 2 pills left for the entire outpost?" Zhao Lu sighed before replying, "Yes. After everyone died, the supply chain was cut off, so not only did medicines and pills run out, but all other supplies as well." Gu Qingshan fell silent briefly before asking, "Do you still have spirit stones?" "No." Zhao Lu shook his head briefly. "Well, then we're doomed." Gu Qingshan could only sigh. "What's the matter?" Zhao Lu hurriedly responded. "The invisibility formation of the outpost has weakened. Without spirit stones, we won't be able to restore its power, and ultimately it will disappear," Gu Qingshan explained. Zhao Lu was stunned by what he heard. He immediately jumped to his feet and rushed outside. If the invisibility formation dissipates, all sorts of demons and monsters will immediately detect the outpost, and they will have no chance of survival. No wonder a couple of days ago, on the day of departure, the captain's eyes looked lost and devoid of hope. Gu Qingshan looked in the direction where the militiaman had run off, and after a couple of breaths, he heard a faint buzzing sound from outside. Tilde vu tilde. This sound meant that the spirit stones in the formation had been replaced, and it had begun to restore its power. It seemed that Zhao Lu had hidden some spare spirit stones. In this world, every character was real, made of flesh and blood. You couldn't treat them like foolish programmed NPCs. You would lose more than you could gain from it. Gu Qingshan had learned this lesson a long time ago. Some time passed, and Zhao Lu returned to the room, sat against the wall, and trying to hold back, eventually burst into tears. "Why are you crying?" "Now we definitely have no more spirit stones. We will die when the formation's power disappears. The monsters will invade and kill us." Gu Qingshan silently scraped the juice off the surface of the healing pill, swallowed it, and tried to feel the spiritual energy within himself. At first, he was a little nervous, unsure if he could truly sense it. But everything went well. The spiritual energy of his Dantian immediately responded, merged with the pill, and absorbed it, beginning to spread its healing power. Gu Qingshan felt the warmth spreading throughout his body, and the wounds he had received began to itch slightly. It meant that they had already started to heal. When Gu Qingshan opened his eyes, he felt that he had completely absorbed the pill. It was past midnight. He stood up and felt himself in much better shape than before, with most of the wounds covered by scabs. Zhao Lu was still sitting there, nodding his head from side to side due to lack of sleep. Seeing that Gu Qingshan had woken up, he looked at him expectantly and asked, "How are you feeling? Are you able to take me out of here?" Obviously, the latter part of the question interested him much more. If it weren't for that, he probably wouldn't have given the healing pills away. Gu Qingshan casually replied, "Much better, but it will still take a couple of days for a complete recovery." "Then continue resting." Zhao Lu shrugged, stood up, turned around, and left. After his departure, Gu Qingshan sat down on the ground and began to contemplate his situation. In his time, demons and monsters managed to escape the game and enter the real world. By that point, human civilization had been wiped off the face of the earth. The remnants of humanity were barely surviving, unable to resist the onslaught of the apocalypse and escape. It was a dead-end situation. Looking back to the time of the game's release, strange occurrences had already begun. At that time, every country was doing everything possible to popularize the game. Food, money, beauty, power, everything could be granted to you if you were strong enough in the game. Strange things were happening everywhere, but they were concealed by the upper echelons of humanity, not allowing others to know anything. It was only when the first in-game weapons were transferred to the real world that people finally realized it was a real, different world, not just a game. Everyone went crazy and only wanted one thing: to enter the game. But the demons and monsters in the game were truly terrifying. They had no trouble depriving humanity of all hope. Despite hundreds of millions of people joining the game, eager to help the people from another world fight the demons, every strategic operation by humanity failed again and again. Until the final battle, before which the game released a server announcement stating that if the operation failed, the demon race would completely take over the other world and use it as a base to invade reality. And then the real world would also be ravaged by demons. The real world plunged into chaos. Everyone over the age of 5 was required to create a game account. Propaganda claimed that even if you couldn't find a person weaker than you could still use your body as a shield for the main legions of the militia. But even so, humanity suffered defeat in the last battle. Only Gu Qingshan, who led the strongest guild in his country, managed to complete the system quests, successfully clearing the path to the final demon lord. When all his comrades perished, Gu Qingshan finally managed to overthrow the demon lord from his throne, constructed from flesh and bones, and had the chance to kill the final boss. At that moment, a heavy system voice resounded twice. The last ascension of humanity has failed. The last stronghold of humanity has been destroyed. Task conclusion: humanity has lost. The game is over. The protective barrier is destroyed. The destruction of reality begins. Tilde boom, tilde. A powerful explosion resounded, forcibly removing everyone from the game. Utterly helpless, people could only watch as their world came to an end. Moments before, just before exiting the game, Gu Qingshan exerted all his strength into a final strike. He raised his weapon and plunged the blade into the heart of the demon lord. Gu Qingshan didn't have a chance to see the result of his strike. His vision darkened, and he was forcibly ejected from the game. Losing awareness of what was happening, he didn't return to the real world. Instead, he remained in the world of the apocalypse. A barely audible mechanical voice resounded. Player Gu Qingshan has slain the final demon lord. The player has ignited a spark of hope for a desperate world. Special reward for killing the final boss. Obtained. Before disconnecting, Gu Qingshan felt something in his hand. When he woke up, he was already inside a dead soldier's pit. Lost in reminiscence, he shook his head and let out a heavy sigh. Strange. 10 whole years had passed since the game's release, but he had never heard of any final rewards. Curiosity sparked about what kind of reward it could be. Wait, I made a mistake. Gu Qingshan suddenly remembered one crucial detail. When he regained consciousness in the dead pit, something was in his hand. A saber. Turning back, he looked at it. The saber remained stuck in the ground. It was a well-crafted saber with a golden hue, its blade devoid of any unnecessary details or adornments. Upon closer inspection, he noticed a faint golden glow emanating from the blade. Trying to replay past events in his mind, Gu Qingshan's heart beat faster and faster. This sword had already been in his hand before he killed the commander. Without knowing why, he felt that this sword fit perfectly in his hand, so he didn't even bother searching for another weapon, despite the abundance of them in the dead pit. He couldn't understand. Was this sword found in the dead pit, or did he acquire it after killing the demon lord? Gu Qingshan tightened his grip on the saber. After standing there for a while, he hesitantly infused his spiritual energy from his dantian into the weapon. As soon as the spiritual energy entered the blade, the golden glow intensified and enveloped the hilt in gold. The saber emitted a strange sense of nobility and sorrow. Unauthorized access successful. Proceed to activation. A cold, mechanical voice resounded. In disbelief of what was happening, Gu Qingshan felt that this cold, mechanical voice, which he had heard multiple times, was evoking an uncontrollable sense of excitement within him. After a minute, the golden saber in his hands exploded into countless golden fairies. The fairies froze in the air for a moment, then flew 2 circles around Gu Qingshan before entering the point between his eyebrows. A deafening roar echoed in his head, wiping away all other thoughts, completely emptying the sea of thoughts, and his body became paralyzed, leaving him standing in the center of the room. After a few breaths, a tired mechanical voice sounded. Activation successful. User interface UI of the God of War is now enabled. Gu Qingshan noticed that the user interface didn't differ much from what it used to be in his time. The only difference was a list of black buttons at the bottom. In appearance, they resembled black holes occasionally emitting black mist. Below the buttons, a neon blue line appeared. User interface of the God of War successfully activated. Currently, you can use the first function completely free. Would you like to activate it? Gu Qingshan confirmed his choice, and immediately after, the black mist surrounding the first button dissipated, revealing a label. God of War skills, Gu Qingshan read questioningly. Without much thought, he walked to the weapon rack in the corner of the room. The selection was limited. A rusty spear, a damaged curved sword, and a dusty military bow. Unfortunately, there were no swords. In the game, many players chose to cultivate sword skills. There were millions of them, but Gu Qingshan belonged to the elite. In the global rankings, he held the title of Great Holy Sword. As the strongest player, he was part of the gaming world's elite. Furthermore, Gu Qingshan served as the supreme commander of all guild operations. Often, he had to personally solve the majority of issues. After the war began, he didn't have a single minute of free time. Even in real life, he often had to visit government officials and participate in discussions on military strategies, planning and coordinating operational plans with guilds from other countries. It could be said that he single-handedly led everything. Many elite players worried about him. They believed that Gu Qingshan couldn't focus on sword mastery skills due to having to pay attention to many other vital matters. If not for that, he could have become the best swordsman. Seeing that there were no swords on the weapon rack, Gu Qingshan sighed sadly and picked up the best of the worst, a damaged, curved sword. A message appeared in the God of War interface. The combat application of the damaged, curved sword includes the following skills. 1. Swirling Strike of 1,000 Enemies. User, Wan Jin 2. Sever the Gates. Divide the Mountain. User, Zhang Ko. Mastering both skills of the curved sword requires 1 soul point. The information that appeared shocked Gu Qingshan to the point of speechlessness. Do the God of War skills allow instant learning of combat abilities? And this is only the first function of the God of War user interface. The rest were inaccessible, but that was more than enough. If he could master any skill, even the most secret techniques would become available to him. Gu Qingshan regained his composure, calmed down, and then asked, "What are soul points?" "You can earn soul points by defeating any creatures. You defeated the blood-shedding demon and gained 4 soul points. Current soul points, 4-5. Killing one blood-shedding demon gave him 4 soul points. This demon was not as easy an opponent as it might have seemed at first. They were much stronger than ordinary demons and lower-level cultivators, not to mention their ability to conceal their presence well, making them proficient assassins. Fortunately, Gu Qingshan took the chance to kill the commander, along with the demon. Otherwise, being exhausted and devoid of any spiritual energy, Gu Qingshan would have become a meal for the demon. He shuddered at these thoughts. So he had 4 out of 5 soul points, which meant the maximum he could hold was 5. Not much. As soon as he thought about it, more text appeared. The higher your cultivation level, the higher your maximum soul point capacity will be. Soul points are related to cultivation? Gu Qingshan wanted to check his level. At the top, he noticed 4 large labels. Qi Preparation Level 1. The first level was the starting point for everyone entering the game. His level from his previous life had been reset to 0. Gu Qingshan sighed heavily and silently returned the curved sword to the weapon rack. This time, he decided to take the rusty spear. The spear had only 1 skill: basic throw. Shaking his head in disappointment, he threw the spear aside and picked up the military bow. Military bow. Available skills: 1. Stabilization. User, Zhang Yu. 2. Rapid fire. User, Zhang Yu. 3. Accuracy. User, Zhang Yu. 4. Double arrow flight. User, Zhang Yu. Cost of skill upgrades, stabilization and rapid fire, 2 soul points. Cost of upgrading accuracy skill, 4 soul points. The cost of upgrading the double arrow flight skill is 6 soul points. Based on the information received, Zhang Yu was the general of this outpost. He used a scimitar and a bow, but during the last defensive battle, he died at the hands of a blood-shedding demon. Gu Qingshan began studying all 4 skills more attentively, and his gaze stopped at the double arrow flight skill. It required 6 soul points to learn, which Gu Qingshan couldn't afford. Well, just the first stage of Qi preparation. Well, I really have to start all over again. I need to strive to increase the maximum capacity of soul points. The first stage of Qi preparation was the lowest level, along with the first stage of cultivation. After Qi preparation, there were other stages: foundation formation, golden core, rejuvenation, and ascension. The higher levels could be left for later. Interestingly, the player's cultivation growth also progressed in the real world. The first stage of Qi preparation involved not only sensing, but also using spiritual energy. If Gu Qingshan had really managed to go back in time, thanks to his experience, he would be prepared for everything by 10,000%. His life had been filled with too much regret. Every night, he woke up in cold sweat, trying to heal his internal wounds. In despair, all he could do was indulge in regrets. If he really had the chance to start over. Gu Qingshan shook his head excitedly, regaining control over his emotions. Grabbing the bow, he began to contemplate. The most important thing now was to keep on living. Even escaping from a demon on the first stage of Qi preparation was not an easy task. Swords, scimitars, spears, all these weapons required close combat skills. The wounds on his body hadn't healed, and his cultivation level was abysmally low. How could he contend with demons? In battles with demons, even a small mistake could cost him his life. I am no longer the great sword saint I was in my previous life, and certainly not the legendary commander who led an entire country. Currently, there were only 2 people in the outpost. Him and another soldier who was just an ordinary person without cultivation abilities. With his current level, it would be very difficult for Gu Qingshan to change the situation in his favor. The invisibility formation wouldn't last long. In 2-3 days, the spiritual energy would run out, and as soon as that happened, hordes of demons and monsters would rush in. At that moment, Gu Qingshan realized the gravity of his situation. It seemed that he would have to give up close combat weapons and focus on long-range attacks. By utilizing the invisibility formation, he would be able to quickly increase his level. Finally, he made a decision. I want to learn the stabilization and rapid-fire skills. Warm energy flowed from his military bow, enveloping his entire body. It seemed to explore him before entering the sea of his thoughts. Gu Qingshan momentarily froze, then raised the bow, drew the string, and took his first shot. The arrow deeply embedded itself in the wooden beam of the house. Gu Qingshan didn't stop there. He released arrows one after another. It appeared as if beams of light were flying out of his bow. 12 arrows flew out successively. Gu Qingshan still held the bow ready, not moving even a centimeter. By combining 2 skills, the arrows hit the same target. Witnessing such a spectacle, his blood boiled in his veins. The war god's skills are incredibly powerful. As long as I have enough soul points, I can learn any skills possessed by the previous weapon's owner. If that's really the case, are there any abilities in this world that I won't be able to master? Chapter 4. Gu Qingshan immersed himself completely in his thoughts and didn't notice his body trembling in pain. Examining himself, he saw that his wounds were bleeding again, and the bandages were soaked in blood. He hadn't fully recovered from his injuries. Using too much strength caused his old wounds to reopen. Gu Qingshan set the bow aside and began searching for a suitable bed to rest on. Rushing won't lead to anything good. Everything needs to be done gradually. He took out the second healing pill and swallowed it without hesitation. Closing his eyes, he began to circulate his spiritual energy, absorbing the pill. The night passed without any incidents. The rain intensified at dawn. It was getting colder outside, and the rainwater created the impression that the cold was seeping into the ground. Winter was approaching. Gu Qingshan woke up from the cold. He got up from the bed, stretched, inspected his body, and noticed that the wounds had almost healed. The military healing pills were truly remarkable. After a few minutes, there was a knock on the door. Zhao Lu entered the room, carefully holding a pot in his hands. Gu Qingshan looked at the steaming pot, sensing a faint smell of porridge, and asked, "How much food is left?" Zhao Lu sighed. "We have food left for a day and a half," he replied, glancing at Gu Qingshan's inventory. Gu Qingshan decided to remain silent. When he returned to the past, his inventory had also emptied, just like everything else. Taking a bowl of porridge in his hands, they silently had breakfast. "How are your wounds?" Zhao Lu asked with hope in his eyes. "Better already," Gu Qingshan calmly stretched and asked, "Zhao, which squad were you in, and what position did you hold?" Reluctantly, Zhao Lu smiled and said, "I was in the Cauldron Fire Squad. I used to be able to cook food for 1,000 soldiers without any problems." So he was a cook. No wonder he managed to make such delicious porridge out of nothing. In such a desperate situation, without Gu Qingshan's help, death awaited him. But Zhao Lu didn't know that his savior was just a level 1 novice, incapable of killing a demon. Looking at the hourglass on the user interface, Gu Qingshan pondered. Time was running out, and the sand could run out at any moment. Players are allowed to spend only 1 day in this world, while in reality, only an hour will pass. Level 1. Chi training players must return to the real world after this time, and wait for a day before they can return. Gu Qingshan wanted to know the current year in the real world. After eating half of their breakfast, they both suddenly froze. "Brother Gu, it seems like something is happening outside," Zhao Lu said quietly. "I'll go check." Gu Qingshan replied, taking his military bow with him. In 10 minutes, the sand in the hourglass will run out. I hope nothing serious happens. Leaving the room, he drew the bowstring and silently moved towards the gate to assess the situation on all fronts. After a thorough check, he found nothing. The invisibility formation was still active, so demons couldn't easily enter. What could have happened? A sound came from the direction of the gate. Gu Qingshan pressed against the wall and silently approached the gate. Near the gate, he saw a massive demonic beast, the size of 2 adult men. The demonic beast stood at the edge of a dead pit, wagging its tail and cautiously scanning its surroundings. Despite the rain concealing scents, the stench of rotting flesh from the dead pit managed to attract the demon. Gu Qingshan hid in the shadow of the roof, raised his bow, and slowly drew the bowstring. He recognized this monster. It was a low-level demonic beast. Despite its clumsy appearance, if provoked, it could break through a formation of 2, 3 soldiers. Gu Qingshan was incredibly lucky. What a stroke of luck. It's a good thing I chose long-range combat skills. With the aid of the invisibility formation, I can easily kill this monster. The demonic beast circled around the dead pit, occasionally clumsily sliding down the ground. It was trying to determine if there were traps or other demonic beasts lurking in ambush. There were 10 minutes of sand left in the hourglass. The demonic beast let out a loud roar, exhaling hot steam from its nostrils as it surveyed the area. Then it stopped. 5 minutes passed, and Gu Qingshan continued to lie in wait. Finally, the demonic beast decided to lower its head and began gnawing at one of the corpses. Now or never. Gu Qingshan drew the bowstring even tighter, infusing it with spiritual energy, creating an invisible stream of wind around the arrowhead. Thanks to the spiritual energy, the arrow's power increased 5-fold. These were special arrows crafted in a way that allowed them to draw not only from spiritual energy, but also from the elements of the 5 elements. Ready to attack, Gu Qingshan held his breath for 2 breaths and finally released the bowstring. Tilde whoosh, tilde. In the blink of an eye, the arrow struck the demonic beast's mouth. In agony, the beast leaped forward, sliding down the ground. Without hesitation, Gu Qingshan drew the bowstring once again. Rapid fire! Arrows released from the military bow resembled streaks of light as they hit their target. The demonic beast roared in anger and headed towards the outpost. But after a couple of steps, it regretted its decision and ran back. With each breath, more and more arrows pierced its body. The arrows targeted weak spots and vital organs, joints, and the abdominal area. As the number of wounds increased, rage turned into primal fear. If it had decided to retreat after the first arrow was fired, perhaps it could have saved itself. Instead, it chose to seek revenge on its tormentor, but halfway through, it retreated. Gu Qingshan remained composed, not a single muscle twitching on his face. He simply continued to draw the bowstring and shoot. The hunt was approaching its climax. The demonic beast lay sprawled on the ground. Its entire body was riddled with arrows, and blood streamed from the arrow-pierced organs, staining the ground red. Gu Qingshan's spiritual energy had decreased by 40%, and yet he continued to infuse spiritual energy into the arrows, targeting the beast's weak spots. One should not underestimate demonic beasts. They possess intelligence, and some individuals can be more cunning than many humans. Such a beast could easily pretend to be dead. After receiving another volley of arrows, the demonic beast could no longer hide its pain. Unable to feign death any longer, it stood up and fled. Another barrage of arrows, and the demonic beast, after traveling 5-6 meters, crashed into a large tree and fell lifeless. 2 blue bars appeared before Gu Qingshan's eyes. Obtained 1 soul point. Current reserve, 1-5. You have accumulated enough experience. Current experience reserve, 5/5. You can now level up. Please confirm the level up. For defeating the bloodshedding demon and killing the demonic beast, Gu Qingshan received 4 experience points and an additional 1 point for the beast's kill. Now he had enough experience to level up. Confidently, Gu Qingshan replied, confirming level up. Immediately, the experience status changed from 5/5 to 0/10. The amount of required experience would double with each Chi training level. On the character status screen, his level changed from Stage 1 Chi training to Stage 2. A bright golden light enveloped Gu Qingshan's body. A warm stream of light circulated through his body, focusing on the Dantian and transforming into surplus spiritual energy. The spiritual energy inside Gu Qingshan's Dantian did indeed increase. He grew stronger, and even the military bow in his hands radiated a brighter light. Gu Qingshan nodded satisfactorily and looked at the hourglass. Time was up. A line of text appeared in the center of the user interface screen. Player Gu Qingshan has spent 24 hours in the game. The process of returning to reality has been initiated. All items stored in your inventory will be available after extraction. Returning. Gu Qingshan felt a slight dizziness in his head. Opening his eyes, he saw a luxurious carpet beneath his feet. Standing nearby was a beautiful girl. The room looked lavish, and a pleasant and light waltz played. It seemed that wealthy and influential people gathered here. I'm good at two things, piloting mechs and cooking. You've already seen me as a mech pilot. Now it's time for cooking. So do you want to taste my cooking or not? Gu Qingshan shrugged questioningly. Su Shue'er's eyes widened in surprise. She decided to ask again. But your friend Zhang Yi told me that you wanted... Cutting her off, Gu Qingshan replied, I didn't tell him anything. Really? Su Shue'er smiled with relief. She understood that this whole farce was not orchestrated by Gu Qingshan. A young man emerged from the crowd and hurriedly asked, Qingshan, didn't you tell me that you wanted to confess to Su Shue'er today? The crowd buzzed with excitement. Gu Qingshan turned around and gave the young man a cold glare. It was the same person who patted him on the shoulder, his best friend, Zhang Yi. Both of them came from poor families. In this school, they could only rely on their knowledge. Over the course of 3 years, they became friends. Initially, Gu Qingshan considered Zhang A a good friend. They were like brothers. But he didn't know that Zhang A had planned to drug him on the graduation night and embarrass him in front of Su Shue'er. The girl would call her personal security. A couple of officers would arrive at the scene, and they would arrest him. This event would be a shock to the entire school. Initially, Gu Qingshan had shown good academic performance, possessed talent, and was a good person, which caught Su Shue'er's attention. They became decent friends. But after this incident, the girl became disappointed in him. In front of the crowd, she slapped him and left in tears. The Su family was furious. They wished for Gu Qingshan's death for his sins and put pressure on the school. He was immediately expelled, without even being given a chance to take the university entrance exams. Su Shue'er didn't want Gu Qingshan to die. She had to beg her family for 3 days and 3 nights to spare his life. For your information, the head of the Su family was a lord who controlled the entire Changning district. There were no more than 9 lords in the entire confederation. Since then, Gu Qingshan had to endure mockery and cold stares. No one wanted to associate with him. The company Invention and Exploration Technologies, which had hired Gu Qingshan before his graduation, terminated his contract. He tried to enroll in a new school, but none of them dared to accept him against the Su family's prohibition. He couldn't even find a job, and as a result, he nearly starved to death in the slums. And all of this happened thanks to his best friend, Zhang Yi. Gu Qingshan sank into despair and shame. Every day, he had to fight for his life. Only when the game was released did he find a chance to change his destiny. But until the end of his life, he continued to wake up at night, recalling the events of that day. Anger overwhelmed him in those moments. He had time to ponder the situation better. Su Shue'er was the eldest daughter of one of the 9 great noble families. As a poor student, he managed to win her favor. They became friends, which indicated that she held a high opinion of him. Now he had no real power. He shouldn't delude himself and force events. Such actions would confuse Su Shue'er and put Gu Qingshan in a dangerous position. All he could do was laugh at his own situation. He was still too young, with unrealistic desires in his mind, and a serpent whispering sweet lies beside him, saying, "Su Shui Air is just like you, I swear." Fortunately, this time Gu Qingshan had the experience of another life and wouldn't step on the same rake twice. In front of everyone, Gu Qingshan looked at Zhang Yi and whispered loudly, "You were wrong. My true love is Si Xuan Yan." The crowd burst into laughter. Even Su Shui Air couldn't help but cover her mouth with her hand. Si Xuan Yan was the lead singer of the most popular girl idol group with a global reputation. Whether it was the Holy Orland Empire in the north or the vast lands of the Fuxi Republic, even the Federation of Freedom in the south, the population of all these lands, men and women, young and old, were all fans of Si Xuan Yan. In this world, there were too many people who loved Si Xuan Yan. Gu Qingshan used her name as an excuse, but even Su Shui Air didn't believe him. There were a few fans of her work in the crowd who exclaimed, "Gu Qingshan, it turns out you want to join our Si Xuan Yan fan club?" Zhang Yi's face turned pale. His heart seemed to stop. He couldn't have imagined that Gu Qingshan would turn out to be so cunning and casually dismiss the offer. No, he couldn't make a mistake today. There wouldn't be another chance like this. Gu Qingshan was his last chance to climb the career ladder. Zhang Yi gritted his teeth and approached Gu Qingshan, saying, "Go to hell!" Using all his strength, he struck Gu Qingshan's shoulder with an open palm. Gu Qingshan felt the pain from the injection. There was a small needle hidden in Zhang Yi's palm. Gu Qingshan didn't resist. Instead, he just stared at his best friend. "Why?" Gu Qingshan asked. "What are you talking about?" A heavy burden weighed on Zhang Yi's shoulders. The dosage in the needle was significantly higher than it should have been. In just a minute, Gu Qingshan would no longer be able to control his body. "Why are you doing this to me?" "We were friends," Gu Qingshan asked. Zhang Yi lowered his gaze and muttered, "Don't blame me. Poor people in this world have to seize any chance." Saying that, he pushed Gu Qingshan towards Su Shui Air. His body temperature continued to rise. His breathing became irregular. The drugs were starting to take effect. He felt his body shivering. Suddenly, he remembered Su Shui Air saying to him, "Brother Qingshan, you're mistaken about Zhang Yi. The more trust, the greater the disappointment. It's time to end this farce." Gu Qingshan's mind trembled. His spiritual energy flowed in his dantian like a river, easily countering the effects of the drugs. How could ordinary poison harm a cultivator? Gu Qingshan's eyes gleamed brightly, and he shouted, "Aunt Su, please come out!" Immediately, a mature and charming woman appeared out of nowhere. She was followed by a gray-haired man. These two were Su Shui Air's bodyguards. For the eldest daughter of the Su family, it was quite normal to have two bodyguards with her. "What are you up to?" The woman stared at Gu Qingshan. She had always followed Su Shui Air and knew this young man. She felt that he had a bright mind on his shoulders. He had proven himself to be a good person, but she couldn't have imagined that he would do something like this. Such recklessness could put significant pressure on Su Shui Air, and as her bodyguard, she was disappointed in Gu Qingshan. Not to mention, she had been secretly protecting Su Shui Air, and now, with her being openly called, all her covert operations went down the drain. Gu Qingshan looked around. The official prom for high school seniors was in full swing. All the top officials of the school were present, as well as many big shots from other organizations. Some of them noticed the situation unfolding. In such a public place, it would be better for me not to stand out, but rather to use her family's position to my advantage. Gu Qingshan smiled easily and said, "Aunt Su, please forgive my behavior. The thing is, I have suspicions. Someone wants to use me to harm Su Shui Air." The bodyguards clearly didn't expect such an answer. The smile disappeared from the old man's face. Aunt Su squinted, looked around, and asked in a hushed voice, "What do you mean?" "Something strange happened today," Gu Qingshan replied. "And what is it?" "Zhang Yi slipped some substances into my drink, and then he wanted me to confess my feelings." Noticing that not only the bodyguards but also Su Shui Air were listening, he explained everything in detail. "In case I refused to confess my feelings, I thought he would try something else. So I decided to play along to ascertain his intentions. Are you saying that you have already taken drugs? Exactly, but that's not all. With these words, Gu Qingshan put his hand on his shoulder and pulled out a black needle covered in blood. The bodyguards understood the seriousness of the situation. Ever since Su Shui-er, the eldest daughter of the Su family, became friends with Gu Qingshan, her family immediately investigated his past. After 2 years of friendship between them, they already knew what kind of person he was. So when Gu Qingshan got closer to Su Shui-er, they didn't object. Who would have thought that out of all the people in her circle, he would become the center of trouble? Do you feel anything strange? Su Shui-er asked anxiously. They had a close relationship, so the girl didn't want anything bad to happen to her friend. Absolutely! My libido is burning! Gu Qingshan jokingly replied. The girl didn't know what to say. Her cheeks flushed. Aunt Su took out a dagger, made a small cut on Gu Qingshan's finger, and licked the drop of blood. An aphrodisiac and a strong one. Aunt Su tasted the drop of blood. Wide-eyed, she looked at him and said, "Boy, how do you manage to control yourself?" Dryly smiling, he replied, "I can barely contain myself." In reality, he just needed to use his spiritual energy to suppress the aphrodisiac's effect. In the real world, the concept of spiritual energy didn't exist yet. Gu Qingshan wanted to keep his secret hidden. Su Shui-er was a smart girl, and she immediately understood what was going on. Pulling Aunt Su's sleeve, she sincerely pleaded, "Aunt, you're the chief pharmacist of our family. Please help him." Aunt Su pulled out a small bottle, took out a white capsule from it, and handed it to Gu Qingshan, saying, "Swallow this." The contempt in her eyes was replaced with kindness. This guy was both intelligent and cautious, a good combination. Gu Qingshan immediately swallowed the medicinal capsule and continued, "It seems his goal was to embarrass not only me, but also Su Shui-er in front of the whole school." All eyes were on Zhang Yi, who realized that his plan had been exposed. A chill ran down his spine, and he quickly decided to retreat. The bodyguards were clearly displeased, their anger evident. Gu Qingshan was highly regarded by them, so they didn't worry about the young lady's safety. They attentively watched the guests during the graduation ceremony. However, if Gu Qingshan had any intention to harm the young lady, they wouldn't have enough time to stop him. In the past, when he embarrassed her in front of the whole school, they were shocked and didn't know how to handle the situation. If something else were to happen, taking advantage of the chaos, someone from the crowd could easily harm the young lady. An elderly bodyguard rushed out from his position and blocked Zhang Yi's path, saying, "You wretch! I can see that life hasn't been kind to you. Perhaps I should send you into oblivion, where you'll have pleasant dreams." Roughly grabbing Zhang Yi's head with his large hands, he slowly closed his eyes and started chanting something. Then, something strange happened. As the old man closed his eyes, Zhang Yi closed his in the same manner. Continuing to chant in a peculiar rhythm, the old man's voice began to resemble the whisper of a devil, as if he was enchanting him, saying, "Come on, come on, come on, tell me your secret, and I will fulfill all your desires." A mesmerized smile shone on Zhang Yi's face as he replied, "I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you now." Such a peculiar scene couldn't go unnoticed. People in the crowd began whispering among themselves. Gu Qingshan clearly didn't expect this. "Is it possible that this is the skill of the chosen ones by God?" Su Shui-er replied quietly. "Indeed, Grandfather Li is one of the chosen ones by God. He specializes in uncovering the truth." The chosen ones by God were professionals in their field, possessing unique abilities. Their skills were shrouded in mystique, usually manifesting naturally as a person grew older. Such abilities couldn't be learned or acquired through training or cultivation. It was as if they were chosen by God from birth. In the real world, the fighting prowess of individuals was divided into 4 types: chosen ones by God, martial arts masters, miracle workers, and descendants of gods. Each specialized in different aspects. In addition to that, in the real world, technological progress has reached unprecedented heights. Battle mechs and Starfleet warships were commonplace weapons of mass destruction. If what Su Shui said was true, then the skill of this old man, chosen by God, was hypnosis. While everyone was watching the old man's work, the girl whispered, "Qing Shan, I must thank you." "There's no need for that. I did it not just for you. If I had somehow harmed you, I would have faced an unfortunate fate. Trust me, I've experienced something like that before." The girl shook her head disapprovingly. "Qing Shan, there's nothing more important to a girl than her honor. You saved my honor, and I am indebted to you. And besides, if anything were to happen to you, I swear I will do everything possible to protect you." She wasn't a bad girl. In her past life, when she became disillusioned with him, she still pleaded with the Su family to spare his life for 3 days and nights. Therefore, despite all the troubles, Gu Qingshan kept a place for her in his heart. Gu Qingshan smiled in response and didn't say anything else. Some things in this world didn't require words, but now he was more interested in Zhang Ei's motives. Even in his past life, he could never understand him. Gu Qingshan immersed himself in his thoughts and didn't notice the girl stealing glances at him. To her surprise, Su Shui discovered strange emotions within herself. She felt that Gu Qingshan had changed. Gu Qingshan walked along the empty street, contemplating what had happened. From Ni Yun's reaction, one could assume that he was not involved with Zhang Yi. Perhaps everything was as Ni Yun said. It was all because I got too close to Su Shui, and someone among the nobles desired to harm me. Graduation is approaching, and these cruel and cunning nobles won't have another chance to deal with me. How sickening these people are. If you have such opportunities, muster the courage and personally pursue the girl like a real man. What's the point of picking on a poor student like me? In his thoughts, he despised them and pondered over everything for a long time. There was 1 year left until the official release of the game, the final peaceful year for all of humanity. During this year, I must level up in another world. There is plenty of time. As for the time spent in the real world, Gu Qingshan pondered over it and made a decision. He needed to pass the entrance exams and get into his dream university. It was a desire he couldn't fulfill in his previous life. The university would provide good conditions and great prospects. Moreover, the administration was more lenient compared to school, granting students more freedom. He would be able to spend time studying what he liked and preparing for the battle against the apocalypse. But which university should he choose? Upon my return, I should carefully examine the choice of universities this year. Lost in his thoughts, Gu Qingshan didn't notice a group of 6 drunk men appearing in front of him, walking in his direction. Their bodies were adorned with tattoos, and their hair, dyed in bright yellow, seemed to glow under the streetlights. The street was very narrow, leaving little space. They had to walk shoulder to shoulder. Not even a mouse could squeeze through. Gu Qingshan squinted and decided to step aside. As they passed by Gu Qingshan, one of the blondes, either accidentally or intentionally, stumbled toward him. Being a cultivator with a decade of experience in killing and battles on the war fields, he certainly wouldn't allow an ordinary person to strike him. Slightly shifting his body, he dodged the blonde. The blonde fell to the ground but quickly got up on his unstable legs. What the hell? How did he dodge? The blonde immediately shouted, "Hey punk, did you just hit me? Bros, let's teach this loser a lesson." After these words, the image of the drunken mob vanished. "Let's go!" they shouted and pulled out knives, rushing into a fight. So this is what it's about, Gu Qingshan immediately understood. These people had come for his soul. If it were a simple drunken brawl, they wouldn't have drawn their knives so quickly. Just because one of them is too drunk to think clearly doesn't mean they're all the same. With a short inhale, one of them had already closed in and aimed a knife straight at Gu Qingshan's heart. A swift and deadly strike aimed at a vital organ. Hired assassins with abilities. Without much thought, Gu Qingshan swiftly changed the trajectory of the knife and moved towards the person's chest. Ha! He delivered a powerful strike with the open side of his palm to the chest. The force of the strike threw the blonde back into the crowd. The thugs were hit as if by a wild bull. Screaming in pain, they fell to the ground, writhing in agony, especially the one who was struck in the chest. The blow was so strong that it caved in his chest, and he died. Guqin Shan had gone too far. One must not forget that the apocalypse has not yet arrived. It is necessary to act more cautiously. The only person still standing suppressed his excitement and shouted in a serious tone, "Get your guns!" With a single blow, he killed a martial arts master and scattered the remaining fighters. What kind of power did he possess? Is this some kind of joke? The weakest among us have reached the level of 1 or 2-star mastery in martial arts, and they were scattered like kittens. They can't even get up. A monster. But what's even more terrifying is that they didn't see his movements. This indicates that he must be at least a 7-star martial arts master. Perhaps he has even surpassed the 9-star level. Little did they know that Guqin Shan had only temporarily infused spiritual energy into his palms. The body of a Qi cultivation practitioner at the 2nd level of training, without using spiritual energy, would be equivalent to a 4-star martial arts master. But if he were to use spiritual energy, his combat power would increase several times over. The bandits quickly changed their expressions, drew firearms, eager to deal with this terrifying martial arts master as quickly as possible. Initially, they had planned to stage a murder scene during a drunken brawl, making it look like a fatal accident. Who could have imagined that an ordinary, unremarkable student would turn out to be a true monster? Now, they had to deviate from their initial plan. "We'll kill him first and think later." They acted swiftly, but Guqin Shan was faster. In his hands appeared a military bow, the same military bow as in the game. "Did you want to kill me? Well, you'll have to die for that." Guqin Shan's hand moved so quickly that it left residual images behind. In an instant, 6 arrows flew out, rapid fire. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Almost simultaneously, the heads of 5 people exploded. The last arrow pierced the hand of the only person standing, causing him to drop his gun and tremble in fear. Feeling the breath of death on his neck, he fell to his knees and pleaded, "Have mercy. Spare me. Please don't kill me. I'll do anything you say if you spare my life." "Who sent you?" Upon hearing the question, the man looked at the headless bodies of his comrades. He was both angry and frightened at the same time. He was terrified standing before the man who killed without hesitation. His anger stemmed from the fact that the people who hired him sent them to certain death. He no longer cared. He had decided to take revenge on them. After thinking for a moment, he answered in a trembling voice, "We were hired by someone from the Nisyunhu family." "Good. I appreciate honest people." Guqin Shan slowly began retrieving the arrows from the corpses. It was too wasteful to use such arrows on ordinary people. After all, they were designed for military purposes, to be enhanced by cultivators using spiritual energy. Guqin Shan's level was still too low. A Qi cultivation practitioner at the 2nd level of training couldn't stop bullets, so he had to use the bow and arrows. It was evident that Ni Yun was behind the assassination attempt. However, the Ni family was a prominent noble family in the Changning district. Many strong individuals worked for them, not just martial arts masters, but also miracle workers and chosen ones. Ni Yun, knowing him, he won't stop at this. Guqin Shan started to recall something from his past life, muttering to himself. Killing such a person would be quite a challenge. Guqin Shan stored the bodies in his inventory, scanning the area with his inner vision. In the inventory, one could store anything that wasn't alive. It was a common item among cultivators, where they usually kept various supplies and equipment. A useful tool for disposing of evidence. Next time Guqin Shan goes to another world, he will simply throw the bodies into a dead pit, and no one will find out about it. Chnine Guqin Shan walked down the empty street, pondering what had happened. Based on Ni Yun's reaction, it could be inferred that he was not involved with Zhang Yi. Perhaps everything happened as Ni Yun had said. It was all because I got too close to Su Shui Er, and someone from the noble class wanted to harm me. The graduation ceremony was approaching, and these cruel and cunning nobles would not have another chance to deal with me. I feel disgusted by these people. If you have such opportunities, have the courage to personally pursue the girl, like a real man. What's the point of harassing a poor student like me? In his thoughts, he despised them, and contemplated it for a long time. There was 1 year left until the official release of the game. the last peaceful year for all of humanity. During this year, I must level up in another world. There's plenty of time for that. As for the time spent in the real world, Gu Qinshan thought about it for a moment and made a decision. He needed to pass the entrance exams and get into his dream university. It was a desire he couldn't fulfill in his previous life. The university would offer good conditions and great prospects. Moreover, the management would be more lenient compared to school, giving students more freedom. He would be able to spend time studying what he liked and preparing for the war with the apocalypse. But which university should he choose? Upon my return, I should carefully study the choice of universities this year. Lost in his thoughts, Gu Qinshan didn't notice a group of 6 drunken men appearing in front of him, walking towards him. All their bodies were adorned with tattoos, and their hair, dyed in bright yellow, seemed to glow under the streetlights. The street was very narrow, leaving little space. Because of this, they had to walk shoulder to shoulder, so closely that not even a mouse could pass between them. Gu Qinshan narrowed his eyes and decided to step aside. As they passed by Gu Qinshan, one of the blonde men, whether accidentally or intentionally, stumbled towards him. Being a cultivator with 10 years of experience in killing and battling on the war front, he would never allow an ordinary person to strike him. Slightly shifting his body, he dodged the blonde man. The blonde man fell to the ground but managed to get up on unstable legs. What the hell, how did he dodge it? The blonde man immediately shouted, "Hey punk, did you just hit me? Bros, let's teach this wimp a lesson." After these words, the image of the drunken crowd vanished. "Let's go!" They pulled out knives and rushed into the fight. So that's what's going on. Gu Qinshan immediately understood everything. These people came after his soul. If it were just a drunken brawl, they wouldn't have pulled out knives so quickly. Just because one of them is so drunk that they can't think clearly doesn't mean they're all like that. In a short breath, one of them got close and aimed the knife directly at Gu Qinshan's heart. A swift and deadly strike aimed at a vital organ. Hired assassins with abilities. Without much thought, Gu Qinshan swiftly altered the trajectory of the knife and moved toward the person's chest. Ha! He delivered a powerful strike with the open palm to the chest. The force of the strike sent the blonde man flying back into the crowd. They were struck as if by a wild buffalo. Screaming in pain, they fell to the ground, writhing in agony, especially the one who was struck in the chest. The blow was so powerful that it caved his chest in. He died. Gu Qinshan went too far. It's important not to forget that the apocalypse hasn't arrived yet. We need to act more cautiously. The only person still standing suppressed his excitement and shouted in a serious tone, "Get the guns!" With a single strike, he killed a martial arts master and scattered the other fighters. What kind of power does he possess? Is this some kind of joke? The weakest among us have reached 1 or 2 star mastery in martial arts, and they were tossed around like kittens. They can't even get up. A monster. But the scariest thing is that they didn't see his movements. This suggests that he must be at least a 7-star martial arts master. Perhaps he has even surpassed the 9-star level. Little did they know that Gu Qinshan had simply temporarily infused his spiritual energy into his palms. The body of a 2nd-level Qi cultivator without using spiritual energy would be equivalent to a 4-star martial arts master. But if he uses spiritual energy, his combat power will increase several times over. The bandits' expressions changed abruptly as they pulled out firearms, eager to deal with this terrifying martial arts master as quickly as possible. Initially, they had planned to stage a murder scene during a drunken brawl to make it appear like a fatal accident. Who would have thought that an ordinary, unremarkable student would turn out to be a real monster? Now they had to deviate from their original plan. We'll kill him, and then we'll think about it. They acted swiftly, but Gu Qinshan was faster. A military bow appeared in his hands, the same military bow from the game. "You wanted to kill me? You'll have to die for that." Gu Qinshan's hand moved so fast that it left residual images behind. In the blink of an eye, 6 arrows were released. Rapid fire. Swish, 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 swish. Almost simultaneously, the heads of 5 people exploded. The last arrow pierced the hand of the only person standing, causing him to drop his pistol and tremble in horror. Feeling the breath of death on his neck, he fell to his knees and pleaded, "Have mercy, spare me, I beg you, don't kill me. I'll do anything you say if you spare my life." "Who sent you?" Upon hearing the question, the man looked at the headless bodies of his comrades. He was simultaneously angry and frightened. He was terrified of the person standing before him, who killed without a shadow of doubt. He was angry because the people who hired him sent them to certain death. He didn't care anymore. He decided to seek revenge against them. After thinking for a moment, he answered in a trembling voice, "We were hired by someone from the Ni family, Sunhu." "Good. I like honest people." Gu Qinshan slowly walked over to retrieve the arrows from the corpses. Using such arrows on ordinary people would be too wasteful. After all, they were created for military purposes, so that cultivators could enhance them with spiritual energy. Gu Qinshan's level is still too low. A second-level Qi cultivator cannot stop bullets, so he had to use a bow and arrows. It was evident that Ni Yun was behind the assassination attempt. However, the Ni family was a prominent aristocratic family in the Changning district. Many strong individuals worked for them, not only martial arts masters, but also miracle workers with chosen by gods. Ni Yun, knowing him, he won't stop at this. Gu Qinshan began to recall something from his past life, muttering to himself. Killing such a person would be quite a challenge. Gu Qinshan stored the bodies in his inventory, scanning the area with his inner vision. The inventory can hold anything that is not alive. It is a common item among cultivators, where they usually store various supplies and equipment. An excellent tool for getting rid of evidence. Next time Gu Qinshan goes to another world, he'll simply dispose of the bodies in a dead pit, and no one will find out. The encounter with the mercenaries took place in the slums, a forgotten street without a single surveillance camera. They chose a good spot, and the timing was late. It's dangerous to walk alone in the slums at night, making it a good time to stage an accident. Ironically, this entire situation worked in Gu Qinshan's favor. In the distance, a police siren wailed. A small police shuttle flew through the air. There was no one on the street. No one could call the police, but nevertheless, they were already on their way. It was obvious that they had been warned in advance. In a typical situation, they would simply stab me with a knife. The police would find a corpse and the murder weapon. By slightly embellishing the story, they could easily make it look like an accident. With news of my death, even Su Shui'er wouldn't be able to find any evidence. And naturally, tomorrow someone will come forward as the guilty party and confess to the murder. They'll say they were too drunk. A fight broke out. That's the whole story. Gu Qinshan glanced coldly at the police shuttle, grabbed the last surviving thug, and quickly disappeared into the dark streets. A casino. Ni Yun looked at the cards in his hand and said, "Dealer, give me another one. I'm in the game." The forehead of the female dealer was covered in sweat. Taking a deep breath, she dealt cards to the two players. "Young Lord Ni, there's no need to go that far," said a large man wearing sunglasses. A slim girl stood behind the man, afraid to show her face. "Who cares? It's just 20 million. If you can't afford the bet, just surrender," the man said. 20 million means nothing. You want to have the best girl from my establishment. I won't mind if I lose her," the man in sunglasses replied. "I don't care about her appearance or body. I need her life," the man behind trembled, sensing the figure behind him. He smiled and continued, "This girl is not for sale. Forget about her. You can have 2 other girls instead. What do you say?" "This woman dared to spill wine on me. I need her life. She will become my new plaything," he insisted. A middle-aged man in a white shirt and black tie approached the table and whispered a few words to Ni Yun. Ni Yun slapped him and shouted, "Didn't you say you had everything under control?" "My apologies, young master. Please give me an hour, and I will personally take care of everything," the middle-aged man pleaded. "I'll give you 30 minutes. If you can't handle it, then I will recommend to our family that they strip you of all privileges," Ni Yun threatened. The middle-aged man was taken aback for a moment, then turned around and quickly left. "What happened, young Master Ni? If something is bothering you, I can solve your problems," the man in sunglasses offered. "What do you want?" Ni Yun sneered. The man shrugged. It's very simple. I solve your problem, and you forget about the wine incident. Ni-yun pondered for a moment, then smirked cunningly. Shall we make a bet? The man in sunglasses clearly didn't like the proposition, but his smile didn't fade. Young Master Ni, please continue. If it were any other spoiled brat from an aristocratic family in Ni-yun's position, he wouldn't even consider bargaining with him. But this guy came from a very influential family. The man in sunglasses understood both the light and dark sides of the world. If he wants to conduct business in these lands, he cannot be at odds with this young man. Ni-yun adjusted his augmented reality helmet slightly, projecting an image onto the white wall. This is my subordinate. I just told him to activate real-time projection. Now we can see him running quickly, Ni-yun explained. The man in sunglasses nodded in agreement. He's going to kill someone. Let's bet on how many moves he will need to eliminate the target, Ni-yun proposed. Who is the target? A poor student. I bet on one move. Ni-yun gave the order through his communicator. The man in sunglasses smiled bitterly. Your subordinate is a martial arts overlord. Any martial arts master below the 6-star level will die instantly. When a martial arts master reaches the 9-star level, they can attempt to achieve the rank of overlord. Once you reach the rank of overlord, you are no longer considered a mere mortal. Even an army of soldiers cannot match someone of that level. They cannot be defeated without a squadron of mech fighters. Overlords of martial arts are regarded as nobles, beings worthy of society's respect. Are you in or not? If you refuse, I'll stop playing at your establishment. Don't say I didn't warn you. Ni-yun was extremely impatient. The man in sunglasses sighed deeply. You've got a deal. I only have one thing left. I bet that your man won't be able to kill the kid in one move. That's the spirit. If you win, I'll release your girl, Ni-yun responded enthusiastically. And if I lose, then you owe me 100 million and that girl. The man hesitated, wanting to refuse, when suddenly he heard a voice behind him. Accept his bet! The figure behind him stopped trembling and whispered, If we lose, we'll wipe out the entire Ni clan. We'll strip them of everything and burn them at the stake. The man in sunglasses felt his heart sink. It seemed that the figure behind him was no longer willing to tolerate the situation. He shifted his gaze to Ni-yun sitting across from him, who was proud of himself and already celebrating premature victory. Fine, I accept the bet. Ni-yun snapped his fingers and raised his wine glass. Excellent, then let's enjoy the hunt. We'll watch in real time as the martial arts overlord kills an ordinary person. A rare pleasure. Ni-yun's subordinate ran swiftly towards his target. Late at night, dim streetlights illuminated the road, and the entire city slept. The man's movements were light and silent. He was the great steward of the Ni family, known for his cruelty, a cold-blooded killer. Whenever he fought, someone always died. His reputation had grown from a young age, earning him the name Sun Hu, Furious Tiger, in the martial arts community. This kid lived in one of the slum houses on the 22nd floor, the third room on the left. Sun Hu was well aware of his mission. Open the door, burst inside, and kill. It was that simple. Yet he remained vigilant. After all, the previous group of mercenaries never contacted him. This is very strange. His thoughts were interrupted by the communicator. Sun Hu, we've got the kid. Sun Hu asked in surprise. Didn't I order you to kill him on sight? No, I think the price for his head should be higher. The voice on the other end replied. Damn it, so that's what's going on. This scum from the underworld dared to raise the price in such a manner. Do they not care about my furious tiger reputation? Sun Hu laughed maliciously and calmed his voice. Of course, we can discuss the price. Where are you? I'm waiting for you at the kid's place. I assume you know where to find it. The communication was cut off. In anger, Sun Hu smashed a roadside billboard. The bastard dared to negotiate with me? Just wait a little and I'll show why they call me the Furious Tiger. He quickened his pace, causing his silhouette to blur and resemble a gray meteor in the night sky. 5 minutes later, Sun Hu stood on the 22nd floor of the building. If you could subscribe right now, you really help this channel to achieve our goal 1,000 subscribers, and then we will make coolest manhwa for you each day. Thanks for watching and see you in a bit.